This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
Welcome to the Invasion of the Remake podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bishop, and my co-host today, Sam Stepanenko.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on when you're listening to us.
And Trish Conklin is down with the sickness today, so we'll hopefully get her in the next week or two when she's feeling a little bit better. But Sam and I can hold the fort for now, right?
I think we can probably pull something out of our asses.
Well, that's pretty much every episode we've ever done.
Pretty much, yeah. None of this is planned. It's all spontaneous. We watch the movie and then we come together and we talk about what we liked about it, and then we figure out what we would do differently.
Yeah, then they go home, I sit and edit it. And get it ready for you guys to listen to.
Yeah, she's got an unenviable job, having edited the Christmas episodes, which were much, much shorter. It's a lot of work, so. Yeah.
Well, that first one took you longer than it takes me to do a full episode, and that was 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was more just, there was a lot of...
Learning curve
and like a lot of listening, because even though there was only 2 minutes of episode, there were a lot of bits that had to be rejigged. But it was fun. I had a good time doing it, so.
Yeah, that's their Christmas present to me. I don't have to edit at Christmas.
Well, mine, because I don't know that Trish is interested in that aspect, but she does so much more, right? She does all the graphics.
Yeah, she's all the graphics you guys see in the corner boxes on her social media, and some of the episodes, those are hers. So I do some of the more basic ones where I, stitch the posters together and throw a logo on it.
Yeah, and I've been having a little bit of fun with it too I have a few new Instagram ones and stuff like that. So we're all kind of wear different hats, but we all share the load too, as much as we can.
That's right. It's an even keel over here in Invasion of the Remake, because on the mothership, everybody's got a duty, just like in the Silent Running. Well, actually, I think it's just the one guy that's got anything to do on that ship. I'm not sure what the rest of them do.
Drive around those cool little cars.
Yeah, they got a lot of big boxes of stuff on those ships, and no loaders.
Product placement. Did you catch that?
Oh, Jesus. There's Coca-Cola,
Dow,
American
Airlines.
American Airlines actually built the spaceships. Product placement all over that thing, and the movie only cost like $1 million. So with all the product placement, I bet you that's where the money came from.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that they made their money back before they even hit theaters.
Yeah, and it wasn't like they were like, "Here's a Coke, I'm drinking it" kind of thing, and let's make sure the label's facing the camera. It was just on a lot of storage containers.
Yeah, in the background there.
So I'm like, well, look, they have an entire container of Coke.
Yeah, no, I can see how this movie got made quite easily based on all that product placement, because I'm sure that it paid the entire production budget.
Mm-hmm. I never did find a big total gross for this thing, but I'm sure it did okay on $1 million. I mean, this is regarded as a bit of a sci-fi classic. So.
It is, and you can see why when you watch it. And it's funny, I was watching, I'm like, this movie influenced a lot of other movies.
Yeah, it sure did. Wall-E specifically came to mind when I was kind of watching it. And those ships, too, were probably... I seem to remember them being in Battlestar Galactica later on.
They looked very familiar, for sure. Yeah, there may be some minor variations on them, but they did look very, very familiar. Yeah, and you were thinking Wall-E. I'm going to review my director right away, because the one that I saw, it was Moon by Duncan Jones.
I kept thinking about things like Moon.
Yeah.
And I had to resist using that casting in this, because I'm like, oh man, he'd be perfect.
Yeah, he would be, but
he's done
a lot.
Yeah,
and he's been there, done that. I went with Duncan Jones because he's handled this type of subject matter really well before. So, and with my thoughts on the film, it could be kind of interesting to see what he would do with what I would like to see done with it.
Cool. Yeah, and if you guys haven't seen this movie, it's very much a simple concept. It's an environmental piece. Commentary for sure. Science fiction really works well when it's a commentary. They really simplified it from the original script, but basically the forests are now growing on ships because there's no viable source on Earth for them to grow on anymore. We've screwed up the planet so much. None of that's familiar.
Yeah, it is still very, very relevant.
Yeah, and so I think it's about 8 years after launching these ships. I mean, eventually things just become the new normal, and they're eating processed foods, and there might even be some addiction to those processed foods. We see that today. You get used to not having things. Now, there's big-ass plot holes. Oh, there's no forests on Earth anymore? How are you breathing? Nah, we'll not touch that. It's such an obvious plot hole, but they don't even try to explain that.
Well, because it's not about Earth, and I think that there, if it had been about life on Earth due to this defoliation of the planet, I'm sure they would have had some sort of explanation as to how they have CO2 scrubbers like they do on spaceships and stuff like that, right? So I'm sure they have some sort of method for doing that. But again, it's not about Earth. There's also a commentary about corporations controlling the world too.
Oh, for sure.
Because I mean, that's the sort of the key turning point in the movie is when the corporation says, "Oh, well, we're jettisoning all of the last remaining plant life from Earth, and we're going to turn these into commercial liners again."
Yeah, all these forests that are attached to these ships are going to be jettisoned and nuked out into space. So they can return these ships into commercial use. So it's very much financial gain. These are not government-run operation. Initially, there's obviously some benevolent reason for doing this in the hopes of returning these things back to Earth, and they just give up. Well, there's money to be made at least.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing. Now, these big ships have a very minimal crew as well, and they have the horticulturist / doctor, who's the main character of this movie, which is played by Bruce Dern.
Who's really the only important cast member in the whole film.
In some cases, these guys really only did this movie. But Cliff Potts was John Keenan. Ron Rifkin, who has probably had the next best career after Bruce Dern from this. You've probably seen him on more TV stuff, but he was in the Majestic movie and Alias very prominently as well. Jesse Vince was Andy Wolf. He was in the movie Chinatown. And interesting enough, much like Star Wars, there were a lot of people in the robot suits.
You could tell. You could so tell.
Yeah, they were paraplegics as well. Every one of them.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah.
I did not know that. But
yeah, I thought maybe I read quadriplegics, but they were definitely paraplegics within all of those robots. And I mean, they're pretty small, so they had to be little people as well, or at least
you could tell how they were designed to allow somebody to
Yeah.
use their arms to move them. Like they sort of. You could tell by the shape that's the way they were designed.
Yeah.
So that somebody could maneuver while walking on their hands, basically.
Yeah. There's just a couple voiceovers on the radio. That's it. It's a very small cast.
It's a very small cast, which is going to make it very interesting for a remake because I don't know that I want to expand on it. I liked the smallness of it. Right?
I did a little bit. Because it didn't make a lot of sense that such a minimal crew for such a large ship. I get the feeling they were relying on these drones for the most part. So imagine one of those guys is an engineer, one of them's the pilot. I don't know. We barely see most of the crew doing anything. The only one we ever see doing something official on the ship really is Freeman Lowell, Bruce Dern.
Yeah.
And he's the one in charge of maintaining the forests, like one guy. And there's 3 big domes on each ship. So you imagine each ship has got one of these guys at least, but you would figure there'd be a whole bunch of people maintaining this.
Yeah, but that wouldn't serve the story, right? I think that was why they did it the way they did it was because it didn't really serve the story so much.
Well, the way they presented it, I think it still could, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was really about him, right? And his devotion to the last plant life from Earth.
Yeah, he really was. He really believed in what he was doing. He was hoping he could be in charge of expanding this and hopefully relocating this plant life back to Earth.
Yeah, he was
very hopeful.
He was very hopeful, and there's this great scene where they're all sitting in their cafeteria, lunchroom, whatever you want to call it, and the other 3 guys are eating this protein junk food, and he has that that outburst about how you've got all this wonderful food that actually has taste available to you, and you still eat this garbage, right? And it was probably one of the more powerful scenes in the movie, really.
Yeah, and I've got that queued up. I'm going to run that right at the end of the episode for everybody to listen to. So stay tuned after our screeching, the screeching credit noise, and I'll place it there.
Yeah, perfect. I didn't know you were doing that, so.
See, you gotta stay right to the end. I have little Easter eggs at the end of most episodes.
I knew you did that. I just didn't know that you'd pick the scene that.
Oh yeah, no, it's probably the most powerful scene in the film.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's the one that makes the clearest statement, I think, more than anything else in the movie. As far as scenes with dialogue, there's lots of visual scenes that make a lot of, that tell you, that say a lot too. But yeah, for scenes with dialogue, that one's really, really powerful.
Yeah, and we got to credit that to the writers. This movie was written by Michael Cimino and Derek Washburn, who both worked together on The Deer Hunter. And the biggest name of them all out of these writers, Stephen Bochco.
Wow.
Right? L.A. Law, NYPD Blue, Hill Street Blues, and nary a cop in sight in this movie.
No, there isn't. He obviously changed directions after this, but that speaks to the strength of the dialogue, though.
Yeah,
right. Because the dialogue, there's no weak dialogue in this movie.
No, I mean this is a fairly slow, melancholic kind of film. But
it's not a happy movie.
It's definitely not a happy movie, and there's some dark stuff that happens in it, but it doesn't feel overly dark. And
no,
even though some terrible things happen in this movie.
Well, and because it always has that undercurrent of hope.
Yeah,
right. And it's like, yeah, some terrible things happen, but there's that's that one underlying theme or that emotion from Bruce Dern, who is phenomenal in this movie. He's always steals the screen when he's on it, and when he's this sole character for the 2/3 of the movie, he really pulled out a great performance.
And I totally agree. And they went through a lot of actors before they were able to get Bruce Dern. I mean, I think probably because of the low budget and what it meant. And this was before sci-fi was a big deal. Like early 70s, late 60s, there wasn't much out there. 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah, which ties into your director.
Yeah, that's true. Who was special effects guru Douglas Trumbull, who directed this film, but he's mainly known for special effects. And they did do some stuff in this movie that they would have liked to have done in 2001, but the technology wasn't quite there yet. They was just a couple years away. I don't know specifically what those things were.
Yeah, I don't either, but yeah, you could still see the influence of Kubrick and 2001 in this movie, right? Just the expanse of space, because they do a very good job of that in this movie.
Yeah, and they shot a lot of the interior on the interior of a decommissioned aircraft carrier called the Valley Forge, which is also the name of the ship in this movie,
yes.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that they named the ship in the movie as a nod to where they were filming. It sounds like it was very likely exactly what they did.
Yeah, they wanted to actually film the interiors for the garden in the actual garden, but they couldn't quite get the clearances for it, so they had to actually build that from scratch in a studio, and they did a pretty good job with that.
I think they did a very good job of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it looked like a greenhouse.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's rabbits and hawks and all sorts of things.
And iguanas and...
Yeah,
it was
life.
And frogs. Yeah, there are all kinds of fun stuff in there. And that probably the most heartbreaking thing in this movie was when they jettisoned those first two greenhouses with all that animal life in it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I actually...
They don't even think about it.
Yeah. That was one of the... I mean, this movie makes you feel things. Like, it really does. Like, there was a certain amount of... I don't want to say rage, but anger and frustration in me when I was watching that bit where they're jettisoning them, and the other three guys are like, "Yay, we're going home. We don't give a shit about any of this stuff."
Yeah,
and they make it clear that they don't really care about what they're doing very much at the beginning of the movie. That opening scene where they're driving their little go-kart things through his gardens and running over the plants, like these guys don't understand how important this is.
Yeah,
and then when they get to find out they get to go home, they're like, "Yay, let's get rid of these things."
Let's blow them up.
Not even a second thought. And it's saddened me and enraged me a little bit.
Yeah, and I can see where the main character here, Freeman, has troubles with that, because he's a pretty zen dude with his garden. He's got even his monk robes when he's out there gardening.
Yeah, which I really liked. I actually really enjoyed that. But he's also got a temper.
Yeah, for sure. Because he's very passionate about his protection of this forest. I mean, when you think about environmental activists, this is like the last bastion and the last stand for somebody like him as well.
It really is, yeah. I love how this movie sort of gives you a sense of how quickly he can go from serene to anger, because that opening scene does it for you, right? I mean, he's happily he's feeding the rabbits, and then these guys come through on their in their little carts, and they're repping up his garden, and he grabs a metal bar and he's going to hurt somebody with it.
Oh yeah,
right. Like it takes him like it's like from 0 to 60 like in seconds.
Yeah, he's not the most stable individual.
No, I know he's definitely not.
But I mean, probably 8 years of that, it's probably messed him up already. You know, you've only got these 3 guys that you don't consider friends so much as coworkers. You kind of like them, but not much.
Exactly. Like you tolerate them because you have to kind of situation.
Okay, well, I'm going to run the trailer here, and we will talk some more about Silent Running.
A space convoy on a strange voyage, carrying a rare cargo. The forests, the plants, the growing things doomed to extinction on Earth.
We have just received orders to abandon and nuclear destruct all the forests and return our ships to commercial service.
Man, we're going home!
You can't blow up this forest.
Now move!
Silent Running. Cataclysm in outer space, every moment bringing its own danger as man explores the mysteries of an unknown and limitless universe.
Valley Forge, what the hell's wrong? You're moving out, you're accelerating.
I've got a premature detonation on dome number 2, and I've got an explosion in the main cargo deck. Now, please advise me immediately.
Give me Barker.
I can't find Barker. I can't find Wolf or Keenan either. I'm afraid, Neil, that they might have been in dome number 2.
Dome number 1.
Meet the almost human drones, amazing companions on a journey beyond the stars.
The man has a full house, and he knew it. Now, how about that?
Hear Joan Baez sing Rejoice in the Sun and Silent Running.
Listen, Lowell, if you continue as is, we figure you'll hit the northeastern quadrant of Saturn's outer ring tomorrow morning.
Silent Running, 1972, and I gotta say that Joan Baez song, both of them, just I couldn't tell them apart, and they were just so awful.
You know, she's considered sort of an icon of folk music, but I've heard songs of hers that I don't mind, but these ones were both so bad.
Cringy bad.
They were like cringy bad. Even for 1972, I think they were pretty cringy bad.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because she is a talented woman, but...
Yeah, but boy, they pushed it. It was like right in the trailer. It's not often they name the singer of a couple of songs in a movie right in the trailer.
It's a pretty rare thing, yeah. I mean, that was before like the pop music soundtrack became a thing. Mm-hmm. Aside from the Bond movies, you didn't very often have theme songs sung by famous people. Usually, they were composed rather than pop songs. And this was a case where they didn't do it well.
No, every time it came on, I'm like, oh God, my ears are bleeding.
Yeah, and we apologize to anybody who likes them, but I don't think any of our listeners would.
No, that's just our particular tastes on that. So, yeah, when they make the decision to pop these forests off into space, needless to say, Freeman Lowell is not a happy camper.
And not in the slightest.
No, I mean, he has the same fight, I guess, that he's had a few times that you mentioned, and he kind of goes into a depression there for a little bit.
Yeah, at first it's almost like a sort of a stunned acceptance.
Yeah, I mean, they're blowing domes, and he's still in one gardening.
Yeah.
Like, there is a bit of futility there, but that's the only thing that really gives him any kind of peace.
Yeah, and I wonder if there was almost like this denial, as he wanted these last few moments in the last garden from Earth. Those last few moments with his friends, his animal friends, and that serenity that he got from it is about to go away forever. So there's a certain amount of denial, and I think a certain amount of a resigned acceptance at the same time. It's really kind of a contradictory emotion for him.
Yeah, and then when Barker comes in to kind of clear out that last dome and plant the bombs, that's when he's kind of makes this last ditch decision to defend it. He's like, no, I'm not losing this last one. This is it. This is the only one left.
Yeah, exactly, and this is where you can where his quick rise to temper shows up, right? Because he goes into a rage.
Yeah, initially he's trying to keep him from doing his job, keeping Barker from coming in, but that results into a fight with lethal consequences.
Exactly.
And at that point, it's just snowballs from there,
right.
And I'm not even sure it's a plan so much as reactionary, because there's no coming back from this.
No, there's not at all, because he's now killed somebody.
Yeah,
right. So he can't go back to Earth.
No, right. There's no life left for him after this.
No, and so he proceeds to jettison one of the gardens that does have...
Yeah, it's interesting that he sacrifices something he values a great deal, but it's already been armed and primed, and his other two fellow spaceship dudes. Because I don't know what the hell they do. The rest of the crew is in this dome, and he pops that one off, and it blows up in its designed spot. He's left alone, and he lies to some of the other ships within the convoy?
The fleet, yeah.
The fleet?
Yeah.
Fleet of forests? Yeah. Forest fleet?
Forest fleet? It works for me.
Forestry fleet. And, so he lies because I don't think he's like the command ship. There's the Berkshire seems to be the one that is coordinating all of this.
Yes.
So this faceless voice on the radio. So yeah, he lies about malfunctions and whatnot, and steers the ship into the rings of Saturn to make it look like he's going to get destroyed, so he can be on the ship alone and not have them pursue.
Yeah, and save his one forest.
And save his one forest.
And that leads into some really interesting psychological things for him, which is not only this decision he's made, but what happens after.
Sure, there's isolation. I mean, he was injured initially, so he's having to fight through this leg injury while he's arranging all of this, and it's hard to tell how much passage of time is happening, but he passes out and falls over a couple of times and manages to get himself in a position where he can reprogram the drones to operate on him, and later on that translates into companionship as well as assisting him in the forests.
Yeah, and I love how they go from being, pardon the pun, but faceless drones to having personalities. Interestingly enough, they actually seem to have a personality, even though they have no dialogue.
Yeah, we lost Louie too early. We didn't really get to know him.
No.
Huey, Louie, and Dewey.
Yeah. That was a nice little nod to pop culture at the time, for sure.
Sure, 70s stuff. Well, I guess, DuckTales is back on the air, so I'm sure the kids listening to our program, shame on your parents for letting you listen to our show, probably love DuckTales, so you know exactly who they are.
Yes.
Because we did too. We loved the original DuckTales when we were kids.
Yeah, we did. wasn't much of a kid anymore, but I do remember it. And I remember it from Disney cartoons as well, right? Just
exactly. They were in lots of Donald Duck shorts and whatnot. So not as robots, though.
Not as robots. But yeah, he needed to anthropomorphize them. I can't say that word, forget it. He needed to make them like people so he could have somebody to talk to.
Exactly. He did still, even though he didn't relate to the people very well, he needed that companionship. Yeah. And it's ironic, he wound up doing a lot of the things they did that he was kind of avoiding. Like, he plays pool with them, he plays poker with them. And at one point, he's actually eating the processed food and realizes, like, what the hell am I doing? Yeah. I've got an entire forest full of food here.
And he's eating this processed stuff that he had railed against so adamantly earlier in the movie.
Yeah, and we actually see some of that addictive quality. I don't think we see enough of that for it to really sink in what's happening there.
No, you're right. It's not as well developed as some of the other plot points in the movie.
Yeah. Then we see the plants are starting to die, and this is the most ludicrous thing about this entire movie. This horticulturist who's hoping to bring the plants back to Earth is forgetting one crucial thing that plants need. Fucking sunlight. He cannot figure out why the plants are dying as he's moving further away from the sun. And the sun is kind of being blocked on the other side of Saturn. Wow. Really? Really?
Yeah, that is definitely something that I fully intended to change at least in my version of the remake. So.
I'm like, it just popped me right out of the movie when I'm like, dude, sunlight. They keep cutting back to the point where he's, the sun's getting smaller and smaller. He's moving away from it. I'm like, how are you not realizing this? Like, come on, dude.
Yeah, it was one of the few flaws actual flaws in the film for me was that he didn't realize that.
Men's flaw.
Yeah. But an easily fixed one.
Yeah, an easily fixed one. Unfortunately, as he makes the realization of what the problem is, the Berkshire finds him again. They circled back around the long way around Saturn to rescue his ass because they thought he was damaged. And even at one point they go, we don't see any have anything on our scans about damage on your ship. It was like, it's on the other side of the ship. Just hold them off. And he realizes the gig's up, right? Yeah. There's no saving this. And during one of his screwing around moments, and you can tell, like, being alone is screwing with his head a little bit. He's going a little batty. Yeah. And when we start seeing him do what the other crewmen were doing at the beginning of the film, you realize this isn't just apathy. This is the isolation of where it is, where you are. Initially, I thought maybe it was because he was becoming apathetic like the rest of the crew that the plants were dying. He was spending too much time with the robots and not enough in the garden when it was just the sun. But
yes,
he does wind up running over drone number 2.
Yes.
Which was Huey.
Yeah, that bugged me, actually, because number 1 should have been Huey.
I agree. I don't know. Drone number 2 just showed up first, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he ran over Huey and managed to repair him somewhat, but couldn't get him 100%, couldn't get him 80%. He was kind of... I don't know. He was half a robot, actually.
Yes, he was not fully reparable, yes.
No. And poor drone number 1, Dewey, was very upset about it.
He was, and it's funny how these, like I said, these faceless, pretty cheap-looking drones actually still manage to convey emotion.
Yeah. I wonder if you could kind of move to Star Wars for a second. You remember the era when Battlestar Galactica came out, and George Lucas sued them, saying this is a ripoff of Star Wars. Well, there was a countersuit from the studio, which I think was Universal, back to Lucasfilm saying, well, we're going to sue you because you're just ripping off Silent Running. Because that's essentially what R2-D2 was just a better designed version of these robots.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from the fact that he vocalized, he owes a lot to these drones.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny. Like, how far back can we make these science fiction movies go? Well, we own this one, so you rip that one off.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know. Silent Running isn't a lot like Star Wars, but there's superficial things for sure I think they're owed to it, and I think a lot of science fiction has over the years as well. I mean, I can think of a few episodes of Red Dwarf where Rimmer's in the garden on the big ship.
Yeah.
alone. I mean, yeah, he was the only crew member left on that ship in that series that was human.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of parallels to this film and a lot of other ones. Like we talked about Moon and Wall-E, and I'm sure there are others, but those are the two that popped into our heads really quickly.
Mm-hmm. And if you can name a few more, let us know in the comments of wherever you find this.
Yes.
Social media, wherever. Drop us a note.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you have not seen this movie, watch it. It's not that long. It's only an hour and a half.
Yeah,
So
89 minutes.
Yeah, so it's a very watchable film, and it doesn't feel even like an hour and a half. It watches really, really well for a movie that's paced as the way it is.
Yeah, it's a slower pace, but kind of done pretty quickly. Yeah, they don't waste a lot of time. And honestly, they probably could have told this thing in an hour, and it still would have been a great story. But
yes,
you kind of need those moments of where he's on his own. And that's isolation,
because it's really a key point of the film is what happens to him when he's alone. Right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of strings in this movie, right? Because you've got the environmental theme, you've got the corporate theme.
Yeah, and the environmental theme's hammered over your head.
Yes, and then of course you've also got the whole thing about what happens when you're isolated like that. So there's quite a bit happening in this movie, and it all ties together really nicely. Yeah,
the end of this movie, he has the one good drone left, Dewey. And asks him to maintain this last forest. He realizes this is
he's got no other options anymore.
He's got no options anymore because once that Berkshire gets to him, they'll figure out what he did, and it's game over.
Yeah, and that forest would have been nuked just like that.
Yeah, they did. Berkshire did ask them to eject that forest. I mean, at the end of the day, they didn't really need to nuke them.
No, that was just like
why would
overkill.
You hold on to your surplus, right? Yeah. And you could just eject them. I mean, if you're non-carrying humans anyway, what's the difference of launching some space junk out there? At least the forests will hopefully survive on their own.
Exactly. Right,
and could be retrieved later. One should just drop them into orbit somewhere.
Yeah, that would have made more sense, but it wouldn't have served the story.
No,
right, and that's really what it comes down to, is serving the story.
But I would have liked to seen that conversation happen or something.
Yeah, I mean,
it comes down to just I'm following orders.
Yeah, and I think part of why they do it that way too is it shows the callousness of the human being. It's like, well, we don't need these anymore, so why are we?
Yeah, and yet there is compassion for their fellow human beings. Like, he's the only one left on the ship. Rather than giving up on the ship, and maybe it was from a corporate standpoint, the ship is worth more to them than the human on it. But they came around to rescue him. They're like, well, we at least had to try.
Yeah,
and they make it sound like that.
Well, because there's a bit of dialogue when he's first sort of building his lie, where they talk about how he was. Like, he's an original member of the project, and they really value him, and he's done such good work that they want to make sure that he's taken care of, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that they're kind of hinting that they felt
there's value in him still.
There's value in him still, and he deserved the right to be rescued for all the hard work he'd done.
Yeah,
not knowing that
that wasn't what he wanted at all.
No, he wanted to be just left alone, right?
Yeah,
that the ending clearly indicates that he had no. He didn't want anything to do with the human race anymore.
No, with the Berkshire only closing in at a couple hours away, he jettisons the final forest with Huey on board.
And sun lamps.
Dewey, yeah. And sun lamps, yeah. Once he realizes what's going on, he makes sure there's a lot of sun lamps to help keep everything thriving and leaving the robot in charge of the forest. And then he blows himself up with the
remaining nukes,
Huey and the remaining nukes, which is a very sad ending. But considering what he did to get to this point, it's the old rule of you did a bunch of terrible things, you need to pay for it as well.
Yes.
At the end of the day, that was the cost, and he was never going to be able to get away with that. The original concept of this script wasn't as focused on the environmental aspects of it. The character was supposed to be a lot older, and they were going to force the ships back, and he knew he'd be forced into retirement. He didn't want to go back. So, very similar thing, he dispatches the crew and takes the ship, except he is pursued by the other ships when they realize what he's doing, taking the ship to be left alone in space. And he happens upon some alien life forms. This is first contact for Earth, and he wants this opportunity to meet new life forms. And with the other crew with the other ships still in pursuit, they catch up with him first. Much like the film, he ejects the final forest with one of the robots on board to maintain it, and they board and killed him. He didn't blow up the ship. They board and kill him. The aliens find the domed forest with the robot on it, and much like in the movie, he had reprogrammed the robots to be companions and help maintain the ship and whatnot. And the robot, not knowing what to do, gives them basically a photo of him with the robots and the other crew members. And with the confused aliens looking at this photo. That's it. That was the end of the movie in the original script.
I think I'm glad they changed it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some neat ideas there, but yeah, I'm glad they changed it too. Like, there are certain things that would definitely make this a more action-packed movie. I like the pursuit aspect of it, with them knowing.
I think that would have added yet another element of tension to it.
Yeah, and I think I would pull that aspect into our remake.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a very good idea.
Is it that time? I think it's that time, because I don't know. Is there anything else you want to touch upon in this original movie? Because it's fairly basic.
It is a very simple movie, and I think that's why it works so well.
Yeah. The studio was trying to encourage small independent productions, low budget productions like this. And what else was on that list? I don't remember around that time what else got made, but there was a couple that popped like this one. Most of them I hadn't heard of when I looked at that list, but
yeah, I didn't look at the list, so
yeah, it's on IMDb, guys. Usually I can remember these things, but I don't today.
And you didn't write them down either.
Nope. It wasn't worth mentioning. At least I didn't think so, but then I did anyway.
Yeah, no, I don't know how much. I don't think I changed this very much. I'd fixed that flaw with him being a botanist and not realizing the sun is a crucial factor into plant growth.
I mean, with similar movies like Moon and The Martian out there with the solitary aspect, and I was thinking some tension that was really gripping with something like Gravity as well. I'd like to have a little bit of that in there to increase that, and I thought maybe bringing in some crew members, some more crew would help with that. And then when I read the original script ideas, I'm like, okay, well, this would help as well, because science fiction these days, especially an introspective one like this, I don't think is going to work as well. You can still do it, but it doesn't have to be as melancholic as it is. As with spending so much time with the solitary aspects of it, we can get there. And I'd like to see a more of a division within the crew. Like, I wanted to kind of double it to about 6. I guess there was 4, so that's not doubling it. But add a couple more.
A couple more, yeah. And I wanted to see more development of those the characters that are on the ship.
What I actually kind of want to do is have a fully functional ship. This is a big ship, and I'd like to see more active crew. And as they're called back, these crew are already heading back to Earth, and so they're on minimal staff to get to this point so they can decommission these domes and return these ships back into corporate service. I still like the corporate aspects. I mean, and environmental, those, because they say a lot even more today.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that idea. I think that having sort of maybe the 4 key characters sort of as your key characters, but adding more people working on the ship and so on would sort of fill it up, because you're right. It is a little bare bones.
Yeah, no, I wanted to still increase it. I do have, when I did my casting, I didn't name anybody after the original crew. I didn't think the names were too terribly important. I even switched sexes and whatnot. But I wanted to have kind of a 50-50 split between pro and con within the crew.
And I
just more people to knock off. I wanted to end with one primary person.
Yeah, and maybe make it a little bit longer and spend more time, like the first half of the movie, with sort of the dynamic on the ship, right? Developing all these characters a little bit more, because I mean, they did a great job of showing Freeman's mercurial temperament, right, and how devoted he was to these forests. But there's not enough of the other characters for you to really care about them one way or the other.
Yeah.
When they're gone, you're like, okay.
Yeah, I just want some more tension moments. Like, so if he had a couple more people on his side, say they blow the first dome, they blow this, and when he blows the second one with the two crew members on it, maybe he blows the dome prematurely and it does damage the ship. So he's still got a couple crew members out there that can help work with this and engineer this. And now we're into these little more gravity situations, right? Where you got a little spacewalking and things blowing around and whatnot in space as they're trying to keep the ship together so they can save this last forest. And then you can lose a couple more people along the way, couple allies that he's going to feel really bad about.
That certainly would make that those moments that the whole isolation.
And you can lose one of those drones there as well,
right? Because he had allies and he doesn't anymore.
Yeah, because I didn't understand why all the drones were outside while the ship was running into the rings. Like, you would know when you're going into these rings, why wouldn't you have all personnel, including your drones, back on board the ship? I'm like, why? You just lost one unnecessarily.
Absolutely, yeah. But he didn't know he was going to the rings, remember? Because he was asleep.
Oh, well, true. But, I mean, he did plot a course.
Yes. Yeah.
He should at least know the timing of it all, but I guess that's not really his specialty.
It's not. And I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, he is a gardener. Mm-hmm. Right. And I don't think he actually technically was a botanist. I think he was just that, a gardener.
Right.
But you'd think that he would be a botanist.
You would think, and that's just it. You'd probably want more specialists on board.
Yeah.
So I threw a couple more on his side. I would think there'd be a lot more, but you can explain that by having a lot move over to maybe their primary ship, and I really like that pursuit aspect.
Yes, I think we can keep all that, and without changing it too much, you can add another layer of tension. You can certainly make when he is finally alone, it certainly will become a lot more powerful because he did have the opportunity to run with other people who unfortunately aren't with him anymore. I give it very much a black hole kind of feel too, right? Which we should cover someday.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe there's an opportunity for the aliens. I'm not so digging that idea, but
no, you know what? It takes away. I think it would take away from the story.
Well, part of me likes to see something hopeful where they take the forest to use it properly on their planet, or
and that would just to give that last take away for the bleakness of the original ending. I kind of with you on that and kind of not. Like I said, I like the idea of having that last sort of bit of hope.
A hopeful note on a very dour note, and that's the beauty of this movie too. You're kind of on his side, but kind of not because he's so extreme to get what he wants. So you're sympathetic. You're riding a weird line with him because he just murdered the whole his crew for the forest, so you sympathize with him a little bit, but not enough because you're like, well, dude, no.
Is he an eco-terrorist, or is he just?
And it does make you wonder about his background.
Yeah, it is. You do definitely have mixed feelings.
Lazy corporate vetting.
Yes, very lazy corporate vetting. But again, I mean, I think that the whole point of it is he took this job because he was genuinely interested in the plant life, and it's the planned destruction of the last plant life from Earth that drives him over the edge. I don't think I wouldn't call him a terrorist, but he's definitely, or he probably wasn't even that unstable. But 8 years in space, right, can make you a little unstable, and when the only thing that you care about are these forests, right? I mean, certainly, it could definitely push you over an edge a line that you probably would never have crossed.
Yeah.
No, I like the idea of him just being a gardener. Like, he's just a laborer. And then you have your botanist and so on as his allies, right? And then you have your opposite side, which are the engineer guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and they give you an opportunity to cast a captain on the Berkshire. We can cut away from time to time to the Berkshire.
Yeah.
In that pursuit when they realize he's stealing the ship.
I did cast a captain.
Great. I did cast voices initially before I had fully formed the idea in my head, so I don't have a captain in mind. but it had a couple of nods to other movies through the voices that I used. So that's kind of fun.
Probably going on the same type of wavelength. And
we
actually,
might.
I think you're going to appreciate the irony of some of my casting.
That's cool.
Or that particular casting, anyhow.
Now, before we sat down, you said you had some ideas of your own.
I do.
And you were quite excited.
I am. I don't want to make a live action remake. I want to animate it.
It would certainly free everything up.
That's why I was thinking it. And you could go and yeah, I think you'd have a lot of opportunity to just make it really quite visually stunning if you get the right studio behind it. Right?
And it's easily done because outside of the deaths, this movie had a G rating.
Yeah. And
you think about most Disneys, there are usually crucial deaths to drive a lot of those plots, especially those earlier films.
And
so you can, if you keep the same basic structure, you can have a G or even a PG film in here and animate this thing, and it would be fine. It would work out really well.
I'd love to see more animation for adults that are for entertainment purposes as much as anything else. Because we talked about the animated features from last week in the Oscars episode, and while they're beautiful, they're pretty heavy, not really entertainment movies. They're movies that are to sort of make you think. And this movie would do that too. But I just love the idea of going in reverse instead of doing a live action remake of an animated film. Why not make an animated remake of a live action film?
Sure. Science fiction hasn't had the greatest history in animation outside of anime from Japan, but we've had a few. Titan AE is probably one of my favorites, and didn't do particularly well, but
and
I love the movie.
That's the unfortunate thing.
It's similar conceits.
They are very similar, yeah. And maybe even another one that maybe was even inspired by it. Now I want to watch that again.
I'll lend it to you at the end of the show.
There we go. But the thing is, the problem is animation aimed at adults doesn't do very well. That's the only thing the problem I see is most adults don't gravitate towards
but the thing is,
films.
it doesn't have to be. Because there's nothing in here that you couldn't speak to kids.
That's true.
And environmental lessons, let's face it seems to be lost on the grown-ups at this point. So, maybe the next generation will swing it back around. So gearing this to kids is probably a good idea.
And it could make it add to the success of it, it's for sure.
Yeah. So anthropomorphizing the robots, hey, I can say it.
Yeah. Normally I can too, but apparently today I can't.
Would work very easily in animation. And you could make them far more mobile and animated through that. Now you could do it through CG and have something.
But
really emoting.
I thought about that. I'm like, well, you could certainly. You're not as limited as you were in 1972, so you certainly could make them, give them a lot more personality through CG or even through practical effects, like they did with Star Wars. They were still practical. Yeah, but they certainly they were a lot more dynamic than the ones in Silent Running. So there's lots of ways you could do it in live action, but the thought of animating it just really appealed to me. I don't know why, but it did.
Yeah, I didn't run with that idea, but even when I watched it, it did remind me of some older Japanese animes I'd seen and would easily fit in there. And they do that melancholic tone quite well.
Yes, they do.
So, especially a Japanese anime of this movie, it would not be out of the realm.
No, that's why I thought it'd be fun to turn it on its head a little bit, fix some of the minor and major flaws, maybe address some of the things that you mentioned as well, like what life on Earth is really like. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that could feed in really well into Freeman not understanding why these guys are so happy to go home, because life on Earth sucks.
Yeah. Well, when he talks about everything's the same, like people don't care, everything's 75 degrees, there's no imagination, no creativity,
there's no life.
There's no life. Everything tastes the same. Like it's just existing. How? But I kind of dig the irony of that they've done this by doming the earth, which is you've also domed your forests and separated it from the earth because it can't seem to grow in the soil. Like, what have we done?
Yes, exactly. And it is how badly have we damaged our ecosystem that you can't get any kind of life to grow, right? Mm-hmm. You have maybe they do have like a sort of a bacteria-based CO2 scrubber that allows them to clean the air. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like as close to plant life as they get is sort of this algae that does it for them.
Yeah, some bioengineered thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, explain that a little bit better, right? Explain away or some of the things that they just sort of
because
glossed over.
it does feel like a really big hole, especially in 1972. Like, well, take away the plants, we all die.
Yes,
Like that's
quickly.
Yes, and quickly. And I mean, it's not just the plants, but the rest of the ecosystem that goes along with relying on plants. You know, the insects that feed on that and pollinate other plants, and the plants that feed animals, and you know, there's a lot we are going to be left without.
Yes, and I think that's why part of what the whole ecosystem is on these ships, right? And I want these gardens, and in my mind, these gardens are not just little pods like they are in this movie.
They don't look little. You don't get a sense of the scale. You get a sense of scale from the outside because they look immense.
Yeah.
But from the inside, they don't look that big.
No, they don't, and that is probably because of the limitations of the set, right? But yeah, I want them to just be like utterly massive, like they're big from the exterior,
sure.
like you said, but like they're the entire side of a ship, kind of big.
Yeah,
right. They're not just pods. They're like one entire side of the ship that faces the sun, right?
Yeah. No, I would probably make these ships, you know, the sizes of small cities,
yes.
which is why they need to have a massive amount of people to operate them. But we've already discussed how we get rid of them.
Yes, we have.
Because they're unnecessary.
They become less necessary, and they want as many people away from these nuclear blasts as possible.
Yeah, I love how they're handling nuclear stuff without any kind of protection at all in this thing.
Yeah, another thing that we would address, but yeah, this movie is a very solid film in and of itself, and yeah, if you're going to remake it, you just really have to fix the few small flaws that are in it.
Yeah.
Maybe add
immense plot hole. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, one immense plot hole.
Yeah,
which is easily fixed.
If you have that pursuit, you can address the forests dying because, like, we're getting further away from the sun. This is a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, I don't know. Even a basic botanist would know this.
We're not botanists, and we knew that.
I was screaming at my TV. It's the sunlight, you idiot! Yeah. Okay, let's do some casting here. Yeah, I think the basic structure of this is pretty good, but we can add some tension and some exciting moments of maybe the ship being damaged and repaired, and just them getting to a point where they can even survive being on their own in such a large ship and such a small crew complement that's getting smaller via all these other accidents that are happening.
Oh, you know, you just gave me an idea there. Is most sea ships have compartments, so if there is an incident, it seals off sections, right?
Right.
And I'm assuming that spaceships do the same thing because I mean, it's even more potentially disastrous if you can't do that, right? But what if these ships are designed so that if a section's damaged too badly to repair, it can be jettisoned and
it's modular.
Yes, it's modular, exactly. And then that's how he loses like his last supporters is when there's that explosion. They're dead. He can't get to it to fix it, so he just jettisons it, which gives him a smaller ship with just that garden on it, making it much easier to man for one person as well.
Right.
So it kind of addresses that concern that this ship is so large that there's no way one person could ever run it by themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, losing some of that companionship as you go along too, you can start moving towards those isolation moments of survival. Maybe it's automated and they're all on it. And because, I'd like to just, so many movies borrow from this. I want to borrow from a couple other ones. And I want to have that small gravity moment where you're moving from one section to another in space and just trying to survive as this thing's blowing, and maybe two of the suits get damaged during trying to get out of this module and spacewalking into the good one or whatever.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. So they're not just ejected arbitrarily. They're trying to get back, and another accident.
Yeah, like adding tension in such an isolated thing, it's going to be tough. I mean, you'll have that in the chase, and that's just going to mean that much harder as your ship is starting to fall apart around you.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Is if you make that ship smaller, theoretically, it would travel faster in space. It doesn't matter. You're not dealing with wind resistance or anything like that. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't really matter. It wouldn't allow it to travel.
And this
faster.
isn't just to save this forest; it is to save save humanity from themselves. Like destroying these things is you're potentially committing suicide.
Ending the human race in the long term. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
for financial gain.
Yeah.
That would be a huge tragedy.
It would be, and that's I think that's the whole point of the story, right?
Yeah. And those are the things I think are lost in the original story that would have given it so much more depth is we're never given much motivation other than they want to return these airliners into these spaceships into commercial service. Well, where are they going? What do they do?
Exactly.
What's that for?
Yeah.
So if you're moving, maybe they're moving people off planet. They've just given up on the planet. Like we don't know the politics or the business side of any of that. It's like what is happening from the other side.
Yeah. Well,
and we should be able to. I don't think it's necessary to sit on Lowell's shoulders in the entire movie. We could jump into other scenes
at least
where
for the
we
first half
see
of the
those
movie,
decisions.
Yeah, for sure. Especially considering they clearly have interplanetary travel. I mean, he flies through the rings of Saturn.
Yeah.
So they have interplanetary travel. So are there colonies on Mars?
Yeah, and I think that needs to be addressed as well. And in which case, why would you jettison these things? Because when they could help colonies as well,
Yeah.
if you can't, that's maybe that's the initial purpose as well, is help with colonization.
Yeah, and that would be awesome. Actually, is there
In terraforming,
stuff like that, and maybe that's what and maybe explain that's what the intent is to grow these gardens and then have them transplanted into biodomes on Mars, or they're on their way to moon of Jupiter. And then, right, where that could sustain life with the right,
I like that,
right technology. But then they, the corporate says, you know what, this is costing us too much money. It's not worth it. Mm-hmm. They could just say, you know what, people are surviving on Earth, and the colonies on Mars are doing just fine. We're not going to bother with this project anymore.
Yeah. Initially, in the original script, they were just going to decommission those ships rather than return them into commercial service. So,
yeah. But I love that sub story.
Yeah,
I think it just speaks to me on so many levels in today's society.
Oh, for sure. No, I think those are strong aspects, and you can go even deeper than just the environmental implications of that. It certainly makes sense as to why they're in space in the first place and what their uses would be.
Yeah.
Even as our own ecosystem is dying.
The initial intent was benevolent, but it becomes a corporate decision to not continue with it.
Yeah.
Because it's not fiscally viable.
Yeah.
Right? And that would be freaking awesome. Yeah, it's been determined that the Ganymede colonization is not fiscally viable. We are jettisoning the gardens, and we'll be returning these vehicles to...
Yeah, just the callousness of such a decision would be crazy. And that should create a moral division within a crew.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. And so just gives everybody a lot more motivation. It certainly, ideally, would create a lot more outrage with the audience, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can have more people to hang your hat on. It doesn't have to be that one person, because we're not as limited, especially if we go animated.
Yes. Yeah, no, we're certainly not as limited. And again, like it would be nice, because then you could have a lot of people walking around the background, and a lot more droids and service machines functioning in the background, too.
I mean, granted that the title's Silent Running because he's the only one left.
Right.
But
and you need to get to that point.
Yeah.
You do need to get to that point. I mean,
You
it's
do.
still critical to the film. He's both our antagonist and our protagonist in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But like I said, it may be less time, slightly longer film to develop more of the story and more purpose.
Yeah,
Right.
and those, I mean, you could probably do that with an extra 15, 20
you wouldn't need
minutes.
much more.
I mean, if that movie clocked in about 2 hours, you could add in pretty much everything you need.
Yeah. And there's enough from the original that you could cut out, because there's a lot of those really epic 70s panoramic scenes that aren't all that popular in cinema anymore.
Yeah.
I think that for the most part, people are tired of showing how epic space is. I think we get it.
Space. It's really big.
Yeah, and you could sort of
That's why
couch
they call
that
it
in
space.
some of these other scenes that you've sort of created with the spacewalk scenes and stuff. Like you can add, you can sort of replace those scenes with scenes that also serve a purpose.
Yeah.
And still capture some of the vastness of space. So yeah, I think we're headed in a very interesting direction with it.
Yeah, and I think it preserves the initial intent of the film while still making it more palatable, and you could actually, with the amount of tension and action we put into it, you could actually make it a summer tentpole. Just saying.
You could. Yeah,
maybe not animated, but
yeah, animated is a little tougher. Like I said, and I cast so that I could go either way.
That's good
because, well,
mine probably would work either way as well.
Yeah, but yeah, but if you were going to animate it, I would not want to do CG. I'd want to do more of the cell type animation, or at least that look. Mm-hmm. I just think it would. Again, it goes back to some of to that Titan, some of the black hole type of stuff, right?
Yeah,
just give it that look. I mean, black hole wasn't animated, but
let's get into a little bit of casting here. For me, I did some gender flipping here. I wanted to make our lead a female, so I'm just scrapping the names from this one. It doesn't really matter what their names are.
No, it doesn't really matter, no.
But I made Emma Watson our lead. I wanted a couple of actors who are actually well-known environmentalists. Emma Watson is one of them, and I think she's turned into a fine young actress. And I wanted Natalie Portman in there as well on her side of the fence. And then I had Oscar Isaac as well. That would have been my environmental side of the team. And on the other side, I had Diego Luna, another Star Wars guy.
Yes. That's 3 Star Wars folks.
Leslie Ann Brandt from Lucifer. She was going to be on the other side. And Lyrell Howery from Get Out is more of a comedic relief guy who's kind of caught in the middle, but leaning towards the I just want to get home guy.
Yeah.
And then I had a couple of voices, very, very intentionally cast. The Berkshire captain, I was going to make Sam Rockwell.
Okay. because you didn't want to go right into Moon, but
no, I didn't. Because if I was going to make anybody Lowell, it would have been him. But I'm like, oh wait, he already made that movie, so I just wanted a nod to that. And then the other nod, because there's also a guy named Anderson who does some communicating. I think he's also on the Berkshire, and I made that Matt Damon.
There we go. Why not? Why not?
Just some nods to some other sci-fi films with similar premises of isolation.
Similar themes, yes.
Yeah.
Who's your director?
Oh, and my director, thank you for that. My director is Neil Berger, who directed The Illusionist with Ed Norton and Limitless. He's done more grounded stuff, but I would think Limitless is one of these really cool movies with a sci-fi tinge to it. Yeah. And I'd like to see somebody like him venture into another genre and see what he could do. So that's who I went with.
I like it. So I did stick with the all-male cast. I thought that keeping it all-male added that element, that just added that element of isolation. Because
I don't know, that kind of did bother me when I was watching it because, you do have that isolation where you're away from your significant others or just that sex thing, but with all that conversation already happening now with women in the military and stuff, I figure, in the future we'd have addressed this by now.
Yeah, and you're right, and I did consider casting women, but I wanted to.
And let's face it, when you're on a ship and you're isolated, and if you got female people on board. And there's not much to do.
yeah, and that was kind of what I was thinking too. But
they're going to be doing that.
Yeah, but I don't have any female cast members, but I do have.
If the ship is rocking, don't come a knocking.
Don't come a knocking. Yeah. So for the Freeman Lowell character, I went with Jeremy Davies. Big fan of him. He does that intensity really, really well. He's from Justified, Lost.
Okay.
More TV than movies, but he has done movies, and he's always such a pleasure to watch on screen. And then I went with some and I also wanted him to be older than the rest of the crew. I wanted him to have a maturity about him that the rest of the crew didn't. I didn't quite get the age gap I originally wanted because some of the other cast members I went with were maybe a little more mature than.
Well, you'd think like the captains of the ship and the leaders of the teams would be a little more experienced and older as well, especially if you do have a bigger cast.
That's right. which I don't, but that's okay. So I went with some lesser known TV actors mostly. There's an actor named Aaron Yu. He's in Hawaii Five-0 and a bunch of other films, or other films, TV series, as well as some films. But he's just a really interesting looking Asian actor who's got quite a big body of work on television. So he's an experienced actor, but just hasn't really broken out yet. And I do remember seeing him in Hawaii Five-0, and I liked him. So I'm like, yeah, let's go with him. Next actor, and he's also done a ton of voiceover work for animation.
Perfect.
Right? But
Perfect.
he looks good, so if he's live action, then
Right.
it works, and he's done the voiceover, so he's an experienced voiceover actor. The next actor I picked, again, I picked him primarily because he's done a shit ton of voiceover work again, but he's also done live action. Really good looking man too. So his name is Shamik Moore. And for life of me, I usually jot down at least one thing they've been in. I didn't this time.
And then by the time you get to the episode, you've forgotten it.
That's right. But yeah, again, I have seen him and other stuff. Again, I know I've seen him and liked what he's done. So I'm like, yeah, for somebody who's got a reasonably small role, even though it's expanded in our version, these younger actors who deserve a break.
Yeah.
And then for the last of the 4 crew members like I did cast, I just love this actor. I would cast him in just about anything. I love Kyle Gallner from Veronica Mars and a whole bunch of other stuff. Again, primarily TV. And he's the only one who hasn't done voice work, but he's got a distinctive voice, so I think it could work. Mm-hmm. Then for my captain of the Berkshire, I cast Mark Hamill.
Oh, nice.
Because I mean, he could probably do multiple voices because he's Mark Hamill, right?
Yeah.
So he could probably do other voices as well, but if it's live action and we're actually going to be cutting to him, it'd be really cool to see that grizzled old Mark Hamill captain too, right?
I feel like maybe I should have put Laura Dern in there somewhere because I don't know if Dad is going to be able to do any more roles. He's pretty up there now.
He's in his late 70s, yeah, but I mean, he's still doing stuff.
That's true.
Yeah, so maybe he would be the other voice from the Berkshire. I'd have Bruce Dern in there. And certainly, you know what? There we go. That'll.
But you could do that opening narration or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where it's not too physical, right? Oh, and you know what? We can expand out my cast, and she could be our botanist.
Yeah.
Because Laura Dern. Lately she's been in everything, unfortunately. But Skylar was saying that the other day. He's like, Laura Dern's in like everything, and I love her.
I hadn't seen her forever, and then she turned up in Last Jedi. So.
Yeah, and she's been in a lot of other stuff lately too. Apparently, I haven't seen a lot of the stuff she's been in, but apparently she's becoming quite prolific again.
That's good.
And then
I see Oscars in her future. So
yeah, and then of course I did mention that I would like to see Duncan Jones direct mostly because I'd like to see what he does with animation.
Oh, that'd be interesting, yeah.
Right? It's because I mean he's already done the Isolationist story, yeah. So I'm thinking as a director, you're especially somebody who's as experimental as he is, he'd probably go, I've already done that. I'm not sure I want to go back to it. But if you give him something interesting to do with it,
yeah,
it would be interesting to see.
Now we'll mash all our cast together, and that'll fill up our ship.
That would be perfect, actually. Yeah, yeah. There we go. And yeah, we can certainly make it a lot more alien-esque in sort of the picking off of the crew a little bit for the first half of the movie, right? And then actually, again, Alien's another example of movies that would be somewhat informed by this, right?
Yeah, because it does end with isolation and all that tension.
Yes, and one person battling an unknown quantity, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of science fiction movies that owe to this movie.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, it does challenge the audience with their morality towards the environment, towards their fellow man, and you're left in a very awkward place because you understand what he's doing, but
his methods
you might not agree with, and that's an interesting way to toy with the audience.
It's a very interesting way of toying with the audience, and I figured out a solution. I don't really, really love the idea of aliens being in the movie.
I'm certainly not married to it. I think even without that, we got a pretty good idea there.
Yeah. But what we could do is the gardens can be self-propelled, right? Mm-hmm. So what he does when he puts the droid or droids plural on the last remaining garden is he programs it to continue on to its destination.
Well, even in space, you could feasibly probably propel that pod once you eject it, and it'll self-propel because there's no real drag unless things start hitting it.
Yeah.
It should continue on and hopefully land in its orbit if you figure it out right. Because, I mean, they just did that with SpaceX, launching a vehicle, and it was just the Burns planning that trajectory to get that car to Mars, get your ass to Mars. and then they just overblew it, as Tyler said last week, and it's going to land in an asteroid field. But so with proper science, you could get it to a colony destination.
Exactly.
And so it lands in orbit and then is easily retrieved.
Yeah, and you know that could be his final message. He says
it's a message in a bottle, and he talks about a message in a bottle.
Yes, he does.
And feasibly, this is his message in the bottle. Yeah. And it's funny that I didn't even think about the plant being the message in the force as the message in the bottle, but there was no message to send to anybody. He actually talks about that in the movie, and that would be a great allegory to have that actually being the message in the bottle. Use this wisely.
Yes. Yeah, and you know what? And you could have that ending be that much more hopeful, tragic, because he can. His last message can be, "I'm sorry," but the last force is going to make it to its destination. Yeah, before I
think the movie should open as a memory of him when there's still some life on the planet, oceans, maybe some trees in the background, as he throws a bottle into the ocean.
Yes.
And then ends with the forest being thrown into space.
Into space.
It's a metaphor that hits you on the head, but I like it.
I like it too. Yeah, right. You could even have him as a child.
Yeah,
right? He throws the bottle in, and then you hear his mother calling him or something. Right.
Yeah, yeah, and then you can explode the ship.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's tragic and hopeful at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't that if we want this to be, if we do it animated and we want it to appeal to kids, we might have to unexplode the ship. I don't know how we do that though. Fuck it, exploded the ship.
Exploded the ship. It's still got a G rating, so even when they did do it the first time. Yeah. So screw it. Why not?
Yeah, well, exactly. Why
it's
not?
It's not my problem to explain this to kids. It's your parents. Yeah. Parents, explain the ending to your kids.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but I mean, this is one of those movies where if I hadn't, because I can honestly say I've never seen this movie before. If I had seen it, I probably would have said, yeah, let's not do that, because it doesn't really need to be remade. But if we had to, I think we'd come up with
that's kind of our challenge on this show too, is we'll pick things, and I picked this because I hadn't seen it either. I'm like, let's do it because I want to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, and might as well make our watching also serve a purpose, right?
Yeah. But you know, sometimes that's just the way it goes. We're not sure how it's going to land. We've definitely had more difficult things we've done that don't need to be remade, but this one I think could still serve the same purpose as a remake and still be a little more exciting along the way, and still send the same messages. If anything, I do believe this should be remade because it's a message that we need to send again.
That's fair enough, yeah.
You know, right now environmental concerns are falling on deaf ears, and we need to just shout a little louder, maybe.
Yeah, and hit the right audience.
Yeah,
I mean, certainly, I mean, we everybody hacks on millennials, but certainly they are, in their own way, certainly more environmentally aware than even our own generation.
Yeah,
and certainly the generation that's currently leading most of the countries in this world are so out of touch with what's actually happening with the world that it's frightening. And that's my political soapbox for the day.
Well, somebody had to make up for Trish not being here.
Yes.
When she contacted me this morning, and I felt so bad, I'm like, oh, talk about an episode like just made for her.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, this would definitely be a more of a shouty Trish episode.
Right? Well, yeah, sorry we didn't give you angry Trish today, but hopefully she'll be feeling better soon.
Yes. Yeah, no, I hope she is feeling better very soon, because there's nothing worse than being sick.
No, it's been hell on everybody this year. Everybody's gotten sick one way or the other, so...
No, but yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed that it's passes quickly, and she's back with us next week.
That's for sure. For sure. Now, if you guys know of any other sci-fis that might have been inspired by this, I certainly want to know about them, or if there are any other science fiction movies you'd like to see us cover. We'd like to hear about that as well. You can do that at Invasion Remake on Twitter, Invasion the Remake on Instagram and Facebook, and Invasion the Remake at gmail.com.
Yes, you can.
Thanks for that affirmation.
Yeah. Yes, Instagram, we're still kind of getting the swing of that one, but it's good. You'll start seeing a lot more fun stuff from us on there as well.
Yeah, hopefully we're just that one. Every time you hop on a new social media, it's confusing for a little while.
Yes.
We'll get there. We're old people, okay?
Right.
Give us old fogies some time to figure it out.
Well, and due to the nature of Instagram, I mean, it is a visually based.
Yeah, for an audio podcast, it's a weird place for us to be.
It is. So, so when we post stuff, we want it to be visually interesting for you, and so that you.
But we did this because you asked us to do it. Yeah. So
yes.
So now we're there.
And we'll definitely keep, like I said, we're going to keep posting stuff. We're going to try and keep it visually interesting so it's worthwhile to be looking at both our Twitter and our Instagram.
That's right. There's a lot of content that's being posted there now that doesn't make it on the show. There's some remake news and just things that are fun and entertainment that are happening right now. And I'll just throw up things that we find interesting, and it's a little insight into who we are as well.
And certainly we're also sort of like right now, well, by the time this airs, it probably won't be anymore, but it's Women in Horror Month, and we've been really kind of actively supporting that because they're supporting not only women in horror, but also they're encouraging people to donate blood. And I love the juxtaposition of that with horror. You can see how it works so well together.
What they're doing with it afterwards, we don't know. Actually, we do. We know where it's going. But
it's going out there to save lives. So
that's right.
So yeah, if you haven't yet, check out Women in Horror Month. And there's lots of great content. There's some really great short films being made by.
Yeah, and then it'll probably be over by the time you hear it, but you can probably still go and check that stuff out.
Yeah, and just because it's over doesn't mean you can't donate blood.
Exactly. Save a few lives along the way. And save a few trees, too.
And save a few trees, yes.
I'm not sure how you do that with blood, but, get out there and be environmentally aware. Do your part out there, because that's what silent running's all about. And another thing you can do to help us out, keep us in the sunlight, water us regularly, and tell your friends about the show. Tell them where to find it. You can find us over on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn Radio, Player FM, Blueberry, Spreaker, and
frickin' YouTube.
I'm going to do that again because Trish isn't here. And frickin' YouTube. Yeah, it sounds a little bit better now. And tell everybody where to find us, and maybe leave a 5-star rating and a short review as well. That'll tell people who like this sort of thing that this might be up their alley as well. It'll help get more earballs on this show.
It's not the same, but I tried.
No, it's hers. Yeah. That's totally Trish's.
But I didn't miss my cue.
No, you didn't miss your cue. Yeah. I'm like waving my hands like an idiot. There. This is it. This is you.
Yeah, but I was paying attention. I wasn't zoning out like I usually do when Jay does the lists, because I hear them every week, and I've gotten into this bad habit of zoning out, and I've missed my cue a few times. But I'm working on that.
Man, if you win the Oscar pool and you got to do a diatribe, like, I didn't listen for over 100 episodes. I've never listened to that.
Oh no, I listened for like the first 95. I've just recently stopped listening. Yeah, no, I admit it. I have gotten in the habit of zoning out, and it's a bad habit. So,
Jason's talking. We can just not listen to him. That's fine.
That's not the case. It's just the stuff that we hear every week.
I know.
And the reality is you guys don't need to hear it every week because you listen already. But we're making sure you know all the other places you can tell your friends to go.
That's right, because we're a small little operation. We're not part of a big podcasting network or conglomerate, so we really rely on you guys and word of mouth. So help us out and help spread the word. We don't have advertisers either, so we're spending our own cash to get this out to you with just asking you to spread the word. That's all we want in return right now. Maybe we'll get some merch for you this year. I don't know yet.
But even then, even if we are asking you for money, you're getting something in return aside from the podcast. You get something physical that you can hold in your hands and go to bed with and cuddle with while you sleep.
What are we making?
I don't know. T-shirts.
Okay.
We'll make plushies of ourselves.
It was starting to sound like Invasion of the Remake vibrators or something.
Oh no. Maybe. That could be interesting.
No, it's not.
No. No, I just wanted to make sure they were aware that they can.
Yeah, you could probably go through. We almost come up with a T-shirt idea an episode or every couple. So at some point, I'm going to have to listen back all the episodes to figure out all the ideas we had.
Yes, there's quite a few of them. Yeah,
we'll get there eventually. We're still growing, and we're going to continue to grow. We got lots of cool stuff. This was a 1972 episode. The one I got planned next week is also from 1972, but you're going to have to wait till next week to find out what that is. Until then, I've been Jason.
I'm always Sam.
And she continues to be Trish somewhere out in the world, hacking along. Till next week, we are out of here.
How far out do they go before they blow?
About 6 miles. You should feel a hefty jolt.
I want a front row seat when these babies go.
I'll bet you do.
Lowell, do you have to eat that stuff in there? It stinks. You never let up, do you? Yeah?
Oh, now you hurt his feelings.
I'd like to know what any one of you knows about real food.
Lowell, what do you mean real food? What, out of the dirt? That's real food, isn't it?
That's right. This happens to be nature's greatest gift.
To a celibate, maybe. Come on, you guys. Maybe you know something we don't. Hey, Lowell, give me a slice of that cantaloupe, huh? Hey, don't ask Lowell for a slice. I'd be delighted to give you a slice of that cantaloupe.
Just sit down and shut up. Sit down, sit down, sit down! And shut up and leave me alone, all of you, now, and let me eat.
Hey, now, what's the big deal? I can't see the difference between that and this anyway.
You don't see the difference? The difference is that I grew it. That's what the difference is. That I picked it and I fixed it. And it has a taste and it has some color. And it has a smell. And that it calls back a time when there were flowers all over the earth. And there were valleys. And there were plains of tall green grass that you could lie down in, that you could go to sleep in. And there were blue skies. And there was fresh air. And there were things growing all over the place, not just in some domed enclosures blasted some millions of miles out into space. Look at that stuff. How can you guys sit there and really say anything to me about this? Look at this crap. Look at that. Dried synthetic crap. And you've become so dependent on it that I bet you can't even live without it.
What do we want, Lowell?
Don't you realize how pitiful that is, what you just asked me? On Earth, everywhere you go, the temperature is 75 degrees. Everything is the same. All the people are exactly the same. Now, what kind of life is that?
Well, if it's so rotten, why do you want to go back?
Because it's not too late to change it.
What do you want, Lowell? I mean, there's hardly any more disease, there's no more poverty. Nobody's out of a job.
That's right. Every time we have the argument, you say the same thing to me. You give me the same 3 answers all the time. The same thing, well, everybody has a job. That's always the last one. But you know what else there is no more of, my friend? There is no more beauty. And there's no more imagination. And there are no frontiers left to conquer. And you know why? Only one reason why. One reason why. The same attitude that you 3 guys are giving me right here in this room today. And that is, nobody cares. Look on the wall behind you. Look at that little girl's face. I know you've seen it. But you know what she's never going to be able to see? She's never going to be able to see the simple wonder of a leaf in her hand. Because there's not going to be any trees. Now you think about that.
Fact is, Lowell, if people were interested, something had been done a long time ago. You ready?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm ready. Hey, wait a minute. I don't think you guys understand what this means. Please don't blow up the domes.
Which one first?
Outboard cluster first. Let's hit 6.
Well, you had the confidence that outboard clusters are not any choice, Lowell. It takes nukes.
They're not replaceable.